John Piaget is a Swiss psychologist and philosopher who was born on August 9, 1896 in Neuchâtel, Switzerland. He is most famous for developing the theory of cognitive development and also known for creating the new field of study within psychology known as developmental psychology. Through his studies, he was able to identify four different stages of mental development, known as schemas, which are recognized and evaluated in today's society. From an early stage in his life, and at just 10 years old, Piaget began to demonstrate interest in the sciences, writing up papers on mollusks which were later published. After high school, he studied psychology at the University of Zurich, where he developed a profound interest in psychoanalysis, and also studied zoology in the University of Neuchâtel. He then left to France, where he studied abnormal psychology and spent a year working at a boys' institution. In France, he worked with Theodore Simon at the Alfred Binet Laboratory in France and the Boys Institution. Here, Piaget analyzed standardized testing results from Simon's version of the IQ test. The tests were created to measure child intelligence and draw a connection between the age of the child and the nature of his errors. But after realizing this test was too rigid, Piaget created a new one where he used psychiatric interviewing and allowed children to explain the wrong answers, allowing him to realize that children's ability of thinking was not flat at all, but that there was simply not enough life experience to rationalize, and therefore imagination would compensate in these occasions. He married in the year 1923 and with his couple had three children. Piaget would greatly study the intellectual development of his own children from infancy onwards, only demonstrating his real interest in child psychology. In 1921, Piaget worked as the director of the International Bureau of Education. He would remain in that position until 1967. In 1940, he became chair of experimental psychology and the president of the Swiss Society of Psychology. After much studying and researching, Piaget tried to answer a question that at the time was in the air. How does knowledge grow? He continued to study child psychology and eventually came up with the four stages of mental development, which are the sensory motor stage, the pre-operational stage, the concrete operational stage, and the formal operational stage. Piaget would eventually coin the term genetic epistemology to describe his collective theories on child development. It was not until 1949 and 1950 that he released his synthesis called Introduction to Genetic Epistemology, and in 1955 he created the Center for Genetic Epistemology, which he would direct until the end of his life. By the end of his career, Piaget had published more than 60 books and hundreds of articles. Piaget would eventually die on September 16, 1980 in Geneva, Switzerland of unknown causes. Piaget, though, was awarded numerous awards, and his legacy is recognized all over the world in the fields of psychology, sociology, education, and many other fields. The different stages of development obviously cover different ages. The sensory motor stage covers from ages 0 to 2, the pre-operational stage from 3 to 7, the concrete operations from ages 7 to 11, and the formal operation goes from ages 12 and up. In the formal operational stage, humans become competent with adult-style thinking. They gain the ability to think in an abstract manner, the ability to combine and classify items in a more sophisticated way, and the capacity for high-order reasoning. Hypothetical thinking emerges in this stage, which means logical operations are used in the abstract rather than in the concrete. Skills such as logical thought, deductive reasoning, and systematic planning emerge during this stage. The human is able to do mathematical calculations, think creatively, use abstract reasoning, and imagine the outcome of particular actions. The formal operational stage is an example of inferential reasoning, which is the ability to think about things which a child has not actually experienced and to draw conclusions from its thinking. This differentiates the formal from the concrete stage because children who need to see objects or draw them are usually in the concrete stage. Piaget devised several tests of formal operational thought as part of his proving his theory. One was the third eye problem, which his children were asked where they would put an extra eye if they were allowed to have one. 9-year-olds answered the eye should be on the forehead, while 11-year-olds were more creative, saying the eye should go in other parts such as the hand. Another was the pendulum string experiment, where children had to consider different variables in order to determine which factor was the most important in affecting the speed of the pendulum. Children in the formal stage approached the task testing one variable at a time, but younger children tried various variables at the same, leading up to getting the wrong answer.
If you hit a glass with a hammer, the glass will break. Don hit the glass with a hammer. What happened to the glass?
The glass broke.
Why?
Because the hammer is harder than the glass and the glass is fragile.
Good. If you hit a glass with a feather, it will break. Don hit the glass with a feather. What happened to the glass?
It didn't break
Why?
because the feather is lighter than the glass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. If you had the chance to get a third eye, where would you have it and why?
I'll have it on my back
Why?
because if I can see from the front and back, if someone's like telling me something, I can just look with my eye back.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you hit a glass with a hammer, the glass will break. Don hit the glass with a hammer. What happened to the glass?
The glass shattered
Why?
because John hit it with a hammer.
Okay. If you hit a glass with a feather, it will break. Don hit the glass with a feather. What happened to the glass?
Nothing
Why?
because it was a feather.
But it said that if you hit a glass with a feather, it will break. Why do you argue that it won't break?
Because feathers are delicate and they're like soft and they're not hard.
Okay. Then, last question. If you had a third eye, where would you have it and why?
I will have it in my back because no one can see it unless I go to the pool.
Okay.